Most of you know that Stephen Lewis was our agricultural rep. His 4-year term came up and he's no longer on the board. But he did send an email and I just wanted to repeat it to you before we get started. Hi, folks. I was reminded Friday morning by the ministry that my 4-year term was up with the MVCA. Time and timing are the two most deciding factors of life, and mine has ended with this DA. It has been most enjoyable and educational adventure that I couldn't have went on with a better group of people. Being part of the MVCA and gaining an understanding of its role in society will be paramount for me to communicate its importance to whomever or wherever I am in the future. All the best to Sally, the board, and the whole group who perform the day-to-day duties of the authority. Stay safe and God bless. Cheers for now, Stephen Lewis. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. The adoption of the agenda. I need someone to move that. Moved by Helen. Second by Stevie. Resolved that the agenda for the September 8, 2025 Board of Directors meeting be adopted and presented. All in favor? Carried. Approval of the minutes. I need someone to move that and second it. You play call. Second by Taylor. Resolved that the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held July 14, 2045 be received and approved as printed. All in favor? Carried. And then for information, receipt of draft minutes of the executive committee. Is there any discussion regarding that? No? And so we'll move to item 3. I'm sorry, I looked up on the screen. There's all hands up there. Okay, perfect. We have a delegation today by Mayor Lowry from Mississippi Mills. And I just want to read something before Mayor Lowry does her presentation. During our recent corporate planning discussions, the board decided that management of the Arcade Mackenzie and James Naismith collections should be transferred to others, and the historic mill building should be repurposed for Category 1 educational use. As the board is aware, MVCA is always adapting to changes to our funding model, and we have made efforts to reduce museum costs and to seek other revenues. There have been many discussions with various organizations, including Mississippi Mills, but we are not able to yield sufficient funds. It is important to note that the MVCA and the 11 member municipalities have funded the museum for the past 50 years. The MVCA and the board recognize the importance of the museum to Mississippi Mills, as they have had a long and personal history with the museum and its collections. Mayor Lowry has asked to present to us today as the community wishes to see the collection stay at the mill for the foreseeable future and is asking to pause the current museum strategic planning process in order to consider options other than the annexation and relocation of the collection. Mayor Lowry?
Did the board pass that motion?
As of yet,
Oh, why should you say vice or?
let's talk about another strategic plan.
Oh,
Looking
okay.
at our strategic plan, this is the direction we.
Yes, okay, but
Yeah.
I thought you mentioned it was already passed. Okay. So.
Okay. Go ahead, yeah.
All right.
Yes, you're good.
And do I run the slides here?
Yes.
Here?
Up and down.
Okay. I'll try to make sure I'm not touching anything else here. Well, thank you for having me. So good afternoon to the chair, to the board members who are online, and for the MVCA staff. Before making the time for me to come and speak to you this afternoon. This is a matter that is of profound importance, not only to Mississippi Mills, but to Ontario, to Canada, and to the legacy that we leave for future generations of Canadians. I reviewed proposed Milliken Sales Strategic Plan update. I watched the virtual live board meeting, read the minutes from both that meeting and the July Policy and Planning Advisory meeting. And I note the comments from the chair and members that the Arcade, Mackenzie, and Naismith collections don't have no relation to the MVCA mandate. and concerned that these collections don't draw enough support from the community. I also read the desire to adapt the museum, the mill, to a Category 1 education program. I can appreciate the sentiment that these collections, to some, may not have relevancy to the MVCA mandate. And I can certainly appreciate the desire to create more educational opportunities. However, I'm here to speak to you today not only as mayor, but as a steward of heritage, and as a voice of thousands of residents, as well as a growing number of historians, educators, cultural advocates far beyond my municipality who are deeply concerned about the proposed dispersal of the Dr. R. Tate Mackenzie and Dr. James Naismith collections from the Mill of Kinsale Museum. Their concern is for both the proposal and the process that has been undertaken. These collections are not simply local artifacts, they are national treasures. So in my time today, I'm hoping to share what we know as Mississippi Millions about R. Tate Mackenzie. I know some of you are new, some of you may not have been able to enjoy the R. Tate Mackenzie collection in the Mill of Kinsale. So my plan is to share some of that local knowledge with the hopes of finding opportunities and finding some solutions that respond to the needs of the collections long term and the goal of what we want to. Am I doing that?
No.
No, okay. I'm trying to hold this up. But my goal is to try to initiate a conversation where we can protect the collections, not just for the local community, but for the national interest, and also find ways to have the boards interested in creating more educational opportunities, have that realized as well. So just a little history. Dr. James Naismith, as many of us know, born in Almar, he's an internationally recognized individual. He was the inventor of basketball, a sport that is played by 450 million people globally. Less known, but arguably an even more cultural and historical significant individual is Dr. R. Tate Mackenzie. He was a sculptor, a surgeon, and a pioneer in physiotherapy. He was also a local boy, just like Dr. James Naismith, born just outside of Belmont. His contributions to sports medicine and to physical education are revered globally, and his sculptures graced institutions across North America and Europe. He is also known as the father of physiotherapy. The Mill of Kinsale was his summer home, it was his art studio, and it's where his spirit and legacy are most tangibly preserved. I would note in this slide too, it was R. Tate that named the Mill of Kinsale the Mill of Kinsale. R. Tate and his wife Ethel walked in the woods daily, they took their teeth, the property was a sanctuary where they immersed themselves in the beauty of the natural world. They enjoyed sharing their rural retreat with guests, including such prominent figures as then Prime Minister Mackenzie King, former Prime Minister Sir Robert Gordon, and Group of Seven painter Ewan Braxton, as well as other musicians, artists, poets, members of the diplomatic corps and academia. R. Tate and Ethel were the original conservationists and early adopters of adaptive reuse. Mackenzie's collected field guides to better understand the flora and fauna around them, fostering a deep appreciation for their environment. Dr. Mackenzie would take his sketchbook outdoors to draw or to paint a landscape, while Ethel found inspiration for her poetry at a favorite spot known as Ethel's Rock, which you will see when you visit the R. Tate Mackenzie Museum in Milton. Jumping forward, 1952. Major Jamie Lees and his wife Edith purchased the Mill of Kinsale from Temple, R. Tate's widow at that time in 1952, and over 2 decades created a museum memorializing Dr. R. Tate and his works. So something that isn't widely recognized is that Cloister on the Hill was built as a centennial project in 1967. That's also the 100th anniversary of the birth of R. Tate Mackenzie, who was a centennial baby, minion baby. So the Cloister on the Hill was built with dual purpose, memorializing our Tate, and it was also a centennial project. When Major Lees conveyed the Milliken Tale to the MVCA in 1972, it wasn't just a transaction, it was a covenant. It was a promise, it was a social contract. The Lees entrusted the MVCA with the stewardship of the property, the collections, and the legacy of our Tate Mackenzie. It was built on the understanding that the MVCA would hold the property in permanent trust for the people of Canada as a memorial to Mackenzie and to display the artifacts at all reasonable times. I do realize the MVCA has a judge's ruling or a court order regarding ownership. That would be the first step with the OMA, the Ontario Museums Association, according to their schedule before commencing with the dispersal of items in a collection. What that judge's ruling doesn't tell you is the social contract, the obligations between the MVCA board 52 years ago, represented by you at this table now, and the Lees family. As decision makers, you have less information than the public and the Lees family about that contract. If I were one of the decision makers, if I was in your shoes, I would want to make sure that I had those original documents and I understood the original intentions of the contract between the MVCA and the Lees. To consider dispersing these collections now without consultation, without transparency, and without the involvement of the community, stakeholders, and most of all the families is a violation and breach of that trust. This would not be a curatorial decision alone. This would be betrayal. To go back and recognize something of the awards that Major Lees was granted in 1974, so 2 years after the property was conveyed to the MVCA, Major Lees was awarded the Order of Canada. The citation read, over the years, during a time when the interest of Canadians in the preservation of their unique heritage was difficult to arouse, and in the face of many adversities, Major Lees' vision, perseverance, and dedication enabled him to preserve very beautiful historic site and its personal association with the life and work of our Tate Mackenzie. Without his foresight, the heritage of one of Canada's great humanitarians and sculptors might have been lost to. And that is a plaque is on a boulder just outside of the Milliken Tale, outside of the museum. And those are two well-known photos of Dr. Mackenzie and Dr. Naismith. I haven't mentioned it, but these were two schoolboy chums. They played on the lands that are now Tale. We went to school in Many's Corners and just around the corner up front where the Milliken Tale conservation area is. So we must remember that the Milliken Tale is not just a building. It's a story. It's a story of two boys from Almont in Leonard County who changed our country and they changed the world. A story of art and science, of sport and healing, of friendship and legacy. It's a story that belongs to all Canadians. And it's a story that the MVCA has been entrusted to tell. So I would urge the MVCA in closing to pause this process, engage meaningfully with the community, stakeholders, and the families who entrusted these collections to your care. Invite the public into the conversation. Museums exist to preserve, educate, and inspire. The Milliken Tale does all three. Let's not erase that legacy. Let's protect its gallery. Before I go to the asks, I do want to recognize what made sense 2 years ago may not make sense today. I don't think there's anyone who would argue that because it's been, it always has to be. But what I am to argue is that stewardship doesn't end when it's incomplete. If it is no longer following the wish of the board and it does not follow into the mandate of the to continue as the caretaker of the collection at the mill and sale, then let's find a new way to do that. Let's find the new partners to be able to do that. So our asks. Pause the process. I understand that there is an update that's required. I think it's required by the province. The strategic plans are high level documents. I'm sure we could get input from ministry indicating that seeking long-term partners, long-term finding solutions would be an acceptable way to update that mode and scale strategic plan while other solutions are being found. Secondly, commit to meaningful solutions-driven engagement with the leads and nation families, with stakeholders, and the community at large. I don't know if Glenn is at the meeting here or not. I have a lot of respect for Councilor Gower. And I noted when I was looking at the minutes from the PMP committee meeting, he had highlighted the importance of community consultation and support. There has not been community consultation and there is not community support. I can tell you that since we put this item on our agenda, I've had former board members reach out, the Leeds and Naismith families have reached out. The senior curator of the National Gallery of Canada has reached out. There are museum advisory committee members, the Look and Tail Museum advisory committee members who have reached out and said they have not had the engagement that they feel is appropriate. They've had the opportunity to give their opinions about what could be. Michael Lancaster is with me today. He is the curator at the Mississippi Valley Textile Museum. He's also the president of the Ontario Museum Association, and he lives 10 minutes from here. Jim Mountain, he's the former director of regenerative projects with Canada Heritage Trust, also about 10 minutes from here. The executive director of the Ottawa Museum Network works in Mississippi Valley. I know that the OMA president hasn't been consulted. I know that the Latter County Arts and Heritage Committee has not felt they've been adequately consulted. And I can say respectfully, Mr. Chair, Mississippi Mills have not been adequately consulted. When there was discussion between staff members, the question was asked if we'll have an opportunity for delegation and to receive delegation and to have discussion. And we were told no. So I say this because there is a path that the CA has been following on here. It has not included. And I think it's very important that that engagement is done meaningfully. It's done trying to find solutions. And if it is that things have to be different because the board wished to change the path that has been following for the last 52 years, then let's do that. Let's find that way to do so. And my last ask is to reestablish a special advisory committee to oversee this engagement. Consider best scenarios with continued care and stewardship of Dr. Arte Kenzie and Dr. Tuesday's collections. This is an open tail visual. Says that in your staff plan. Yeah. And I think we have an opportunity here to make that jewel shine all the more. Maybe it's different partners, maybe it looks differently than it has in the past. But moving forward on the path that is in front of you right now is going to probably cost a lot. Whereas pressing pause on this process and really getting it right and getting the buy-in of everyone doesn't cost me. So with that, I'll wrap up my comments. I thank you for your time. And I do feel very strongly that should we look for solutions together, we will pursue.
Pleasure, Mayor Lowry. Is there any questions from there or comments? Paul?
I think we have to look at where we are, because you're talking about pressing pause, but the municipalities have provided under free what we're mandated by the province. We're not supposed to be doing, okay, unless you have full community involvement all the way through. And it's not just Mississippi Mills and Pope, go right up to the end of the Anawaska and that sort of thing in the watershed. So it's a different world than just what you've said is community. Community for the conservation authority is a very big community. Some of which people would probably not participate. So we're a year and a half into a 5-year program, which agreed with municipalities. So your concept of pressing pause is not really a pause because we still have time to address this. Okay, and address what your concerns are and so on and so forth, and see if we can find somebody who is willing to engage with us to operate that. Right now, building, as much as I understand it, is not really desirable for the protection of those particular antiquities. Okay, it's not climate controlled, so on and so forth. It goes to freezing temperatures in the winter and so on and so forth. So there's not the money from the province to put a big investment into the building that may be required to do that, nor would the necessarily want to have a building that has steel pipes running through it. So I don't have a problem with this idea, but let's not say pressing pause. We do have a window to address these concerns, and we can address the concerns that are brought forward. But at the end of the day, we want somebody to come in who is willing to provide a partnership to run that section, because the province has been very clear that's not part of conservation authority's mandates anymore. Okay, and this is being driven by the province more than the board. So that's it. And we have, as you know, been discussing that. You were meeting with Cheryl Gallant about this in 2019. You met with Cheryl Gallant about the Northern Jail.
I've never met Cheryl Gallant.
Well, okay, you met with somebody who was a minister about this, Krista. Okay. I don't, if you want to throw it correctly, that's fine, but you did meet with them about it, and came back to the board and reported. We can
Oh,
go back in.
we said, consequential business.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
So you did meet with them, so you do know that this has been ongoing for quite a period of time. So it's not just this came up in the latest thing, it was occurring when you were on. So I think it's appropriate to say, okay, if you want that process, now that's been identified, we can do that process. But at the end of the day, you need somebody to come in here and say, okay, we're willing to provide money, whether it's Mississippi Mills and the surrounding communities taking part of their recreational tourism money that the Atlantic County provides to support the Conservation Authority. And I assume you're probably using that money now to support the other museums. Or however you do it, I don't really care, but we do get some money through that to do that. And then there's also the question of, okay, you've got 2 other museums. I understand there's been a report prepared in 23 that hasn't been made public yet that discusses the museum. And I think it would be appropriate for the board to get that information to you. Okay, but as I said, as I directed to your thing, blindsided is probably what you said to press in a moment, but I'm not sure how you were blindsided, Krista, because you blindsided us being you knew nothing about it when you had been meeting with ministers about it. Okay, just that's on a personal note. That's between you and me. Okay, and that's my comment.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to respond to them. It does do me very well to hear you say that there's no need to hit pause because there is time. Because even the remarks I heard from the chair before I took the podium, it seemed like the decision was imminent. When I want.
Decision has not been made yet. This it's a 3.5-year process because the municipalities all signed on to provide funding for the section 3 for a period of 5 years, and that's a year and a half ago. So there's still money there. That was signed on, we signed on, all the municipalities and signed on for that.
So maybe I need to ask a question with clarity then, if I could.
Yeah.
Maybe it's to you, Mr. Chair.
Well, first I'm gonna go to Glenn, and then I'm gonna go to Sally. Glenn, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Krista, for your advocacy on this. There has been a lot of attention on this file over the last few weeks, and I think that's part of what my hope was as a board member, and I think the Mississippi Valley as well, that we're in a serious situation, and there have been a lot of efforts over the past 4 years to find potential new partners or funding sources. And the more attention, the more conversation, the more awareness that we can get around the gravity of the situation that we're in, the better. And I think you've certainly brought this issue to the forefront. So thank you, Krista, for that. And you said something earlier, you said, let's find a new way to do this. Perhaps I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's what we're all looking for. We recognize the importance of the collections, but the current funding mechanism and the current legislative framework that we're working through as the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority is not the same as it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago. But I did want to ask, just to clarify, because in the chronology that was sent out by the general manager, I believe in response to some of the township's questions, there is a reference to the township intending to study and reconsider financial allocations to local museums. Can you just clarify for our board, is there a willingness or where is the township at or the municipality at in terms of their willingness or ability to be a funder and or operator of this museum?
Can I respond?
Sure.
So thanks, Glenn, for the question. I'll be honest, we haven't been asked, so I don't have an answer. I can't speak for council for something we haven't discussed. And I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to be disrespectful of our comments at the beginning, Mr. Chair. Mississippi Mills has not been asked for funds. We've not been asked for different options. We've not been asked to participate in the conversation. So I would suggest that the reason I'm here is to point to steps having been missed. And I do appreciate what I'm hearing in that there's room for continued discussion. I think that's a really good and healthy thing. I would say that's not the impression that I have from the board minutes, the board report, and the board meeting that I've watched. It would seem like a decision is coming before 2026 budget. To come back to your question, Glenn, about opportunities with the municipality. We just completed a community services master plan, and that involves culture things, recreation things, daycare, all of the life things in Mississippi Mills. We literally just completed before the break in July, so we got them at the end of June. There are recommendations in there, which I'm sure all of you can appreciate. We haven't had time to dive into yet. There are recommendations to have a collaborative steering committee for the museums to expand the partnerships between the museums, but also with ourselves as a municipality. It did note in the report, and this is based on a lot of feedback, including feedback from the CA, that the museum should remain independent. The other item of relevance or interest maybe for this board is that one of the goals is to develop a partnership agreement with the museums. Perhaps there's shared staff, perhaps there's additional collaboration that can be happening between the three. I mean, for a community of 15,000 people, we're blessed with museums. So blessed with Bridges View, but we're blessed with museums. We have a high level of museums compared to all communities other size. So it is a challenge to find ways to support everyone in their needs. But to come back to what you're asking, Glenn, it was tabled in June 2025, and we're beginning to look at some of the action items out of that community services act, including partnerships with museums in new and collaborative ways.
So that's how for some comments.
So I just wanted to clarify what the board direction was in July. So staff was seeking direction regarding where we were going to go with respect to the museum strategic plan. But coincidentally, we're also dealing with our corporate strategic plan at the same time. So I just want to make sure it's understood that the July meeting was asking for direction on the development of the museum strategic plan. It was not the strategic plan itself that the board approved. We were looking for direction on where are we going with the museum. So there is still an opportunity in the intervening time while we're developing the strategic plan, that if the board feels there is an alternative that they prefer, that they can change this.
Any other comments or questions?
Karen, do you mind if I respond to one of the questions that was asked, so you get a chance?
Yeah, okay, I'll let you then, up to Glenn, I see Glenn has his hand up again.
I can wait.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to come down to some of policy comments. If I can clarify, where things have come off the rails for me. In 2021, when I was involved with the special advisory committee, the committee tabled 3 solutions that kept those collections on site. So there's been changes since then. The next thing that we were aware of, I had the courtesy of leaving the report that was tabled at the PMP committee in July. Councillor Holmes and I also talked about it, and what we chatted about was there needs to be engagement with the municipality, and it needs to be engagement. That's carried forward that message. It's carried forward by others at the PMP committee. I watched the board meeting, and your motion gave me the sense that yes, this would happen. And then, as I had mentioned, discussions between staff and our staff indicated there would be a survey, there would be further community consultation, and there would be no delegation or discussion with the municipality. So that's where I was feeling. Just really younger. I'm absolutely here to work with everyone, but we need to work together. And putting something forward in the summer without adequate opportunity for discussion, closing the door to communication with Mr. Mills on it, that's not going towards, let's find that solution. That's what I'm here to do. Let's find that solution to that.
Look, Glenn.
Thank you. Yeah, going back to June 2025, a key part in what we approved was the staff engaging with museum users in the broader community. So could staff just explain what they've done so far and any next steps in that engagement process?
So, the main tool that we went out to the public with was a survey. We did publish, of course, the report, and we put things out there in the general public sphere. So the focus of this survey was on consulting with the public on the transition. The board had made the decision at the July that we were going to transition the museum's permits, current state to a future state. So that's why the survey is focused on involvement in that transition first, in terms of what we do with the museum in its current state and helping to continue to operate it and fulfill the desire to move to it being an online museum. And then secondarily, to see what community involvement and interest there was in working with MVCA on the development of this new museum. So it did ask about community interest and willingness to support fundraising, to see whether or not there was still an opportunity to raise funds from within the community. And the survey is still online. It doesn't close to the 19th. Initially, our thinking was that we would present to Mississippi municipality this month. I was not available to attend the meeting last month. So that's why there was no engagement in August, because I simply wasn't here. But I did offer to present to council this month.
Thank you. Roger.
Yeah. It's very confusing, the path we got us here. So my first question, I guess, is the strategic planning meeting in July, which I wasn't at, so I'm criticized, but was that a board meeting? Like, there couldn't be decisions coming out of that, just recommendations, or am I reading that wrong?
So report went to planning, policy and planning in June. It rose to the board in July.
Right, but
And
The July strategic planning was not a board meeting or decisions to the main then.
so again, it's not, there was not a strategic plan document. There was looking at very high level, so. The position that staff found themselves in between the corporate planning session. And I'll say the museum planning work. Was that it was very clear at the corporate level that all categories, three programs and services have to be full cost recovery by the end of 2028. Based upon all the work that has been done ever since 2019, secure funds and work with other partners in the community to see how we can do fundraising or find somebody else to manage the collection. There being nothing there to warrant us assuming that somebody is going to come in and take the collection going forward. At the management level, we felt we need to make a decision because when an organization makes any strategic change in direction, they need runway. We need time to put things in place and to close out the old and move into the new. That's why, particularly when we're at this stage in the fiscal year, when we're looking to do planning for the 2026 budget, and as well trying to envision that you need at least 2 years to make this kind of change, and that's a minimum. Like if you were to seriously look at changing out a museum from one business line to another, that takes an incredible amount of effort. So we felt that there was a strategic change in direction that needed to be made. It needed to be made now. And that's why we came to the board, well, first P&P and then to the board in July and said, where are we going? Because we're not seeing the money coming together. We do not see sustainable funding beyond 2028. I have heard loud and clear from all the member municipalities that that museum will not receive funding past the end of 2028. So where are we going?
Well. I don't think our municipality said that, but. So again, like Paul just said, we have 3 years. Sally's saying we have to make a decision now on whether it's going to be a new museum or something recreative. I think the mayor has come with 3 paws, which, as Paul says, we have 3 years. So I don't think, and we haven't passed a motion at all. Like all we have in the last motion was that there was draft changes to the vision statement and stuff. And that in the fall, that after this consultation, it would come back to the board after we did that consultation. So we could say the consultation is still going on, and so that's basically what everybody wants. I think in my mind, the one ask that so we're basically doing it because we're not going to make a decision now. We're going to, we haven't even got the strategic plan back yet because we haven't finished the consultation to take a look at that draft one and make it final here. But I do think the one thing, and I think I've suggested this a couple of times, but I really think we should, and I don't know how better you can engage with the community, but we should. The other thing that's happened here today, I'm almost hearing one municipality saying, well, nobody's approached us yet. And we're saying, well, nobody came forth with one. You know, like I've heard that today at this thing, both sides. So why wouldn't we form a committee with people from this municipality, people from the board with staff, and some of the user groups, and take a real hard look at this and how we could make it sustainable. And I know, Sally, you're saying that the local municipality said, or the stakeholder municipality said absolutely no way. I'm not sure if they didn't mean no way increasing it. Most municipalities, once you start paying a bill, it really, you know, you don't look at it too much unless it's going up. And I'm not saying it can stay the same, but I don't think anybody, because all kinds of, and you've given us examples of other municipalities that have category 3s they're actually making money or it's a viable enterprise to do it. And I think that's what the 3 years is an opportunity to get that done, or to get to that point where it's closer to a break even, or at least it's not costing us any more money than what it is today. And then it's an asset to the whole, it's gonna be hard to be the whole watershed, but a bigger area than what it is now. So my main thing out of all that is, I think we should form a committee of both the municipality and some of the stakeholders and the board to make this happen.
So just, we have you got your hand up again, or,
I do, Chair. Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna go to Glenn, then Bev, and then back to Paul, and then we're gonna have to sort of time this out because we have other items on the agenda. So Glenn, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be
Yeah.
brief. I think just as a way forward, we don't have a decision point today.
Right.
We will have a decision point when staff come back with their report on the outcome of the engagement. And I'm going to suggest to the board that when that report comes back, we need to be looking at two things. One is that we're satisfied that there was a comprehensive and appropriate engagement to make sure the community, other organizations, and families are aware of what's happening. That's one. And two, if we have identified that there is an opportunity for another funder that would bring a different path forward, that we'd be very open and take whatever steps are necessary to give everyone the time to pursue that. But at this point, I don't think there's a need to pause the process. We need to continue going with the community engagement.
Thank you Glenn, for mentioning that. Bev,
Thank you. And I guess I have a couple comments and a question. My question is the report that Krista talked about with the 3 recommendations. Did that ever come to council, to the board for discussion, not really, and what was the outcome of that? Do you remember?
So staff did report back on the work that was done at that time. It's covered report came out in the spring, and I'm sorry I don't have that timeline as far as yet. Can I get back to you on that? Because I don't want to speak.
I just would be interested in looking at that again, since a bit of time, and I honestly can't remember it, so. The other question I have is, the other CAs found that some other CAs found themselves in the same situation where they had, activities that didn't fit into the funding. Have we pursued to find out exactly what they have done to either disperse of that activity or make it viable?
So, yes, I've spoken to other GMs about what they've done, or like us, in some cases, they're just in a holding pattern because they received sort of a window where the member municipalities agreed to continue on. So it's an ongoing issue for some CAs. Of course, when it comes to Blackfeet Pioneer Village, which has been renamed, the province took a particular interest in it, so I don't view it as an example for us to model after, because I believe the province will agree on that. The one that's most comparable at this time, I believe it's in Essex region, and it's still a work in progress. Several other CAs had made efforts in the early 2000s to divest themselves of their museum. So for instance, here in the Ottawa area, MVCA divested itself of Boston Smell on the radio, South Nation has converted it to exclusively an event venue, so they host weddings there. So, other people have done things, and it's a question of what's viable at our location. And we've explored some of those things.
So I guess that leads me to my comment there. First of all, I think the importance of these two vary, as just they're just icons in the world. Fire outreach is the importance of the Blackwater Village. So why are we not trying to politically get some kind of an exemption or something, because it's what they're going to entail? And I think you know, the public are very clear that, yes, the collections are important. But the mill of Kintail and the land around it is equally as important. And they need to remain together, so, hopefully we can come up with something that might have great things, but maybe I'm wrong, so. But I believe we can work together to come to a solution that's good for everyone.
Is that, I'm gonna go to Paul and then there I'll review about closing comment. That's very quick. I'll allow you one comment at the end.
Thank you.
Okay, so we already have a committee established, right? The committee that you've been sitting on. Okay, there was a committee established, the mill could take a look at it.
That wasn't me.
No, I'm just asking, Sally, was there not a committee that was looking at it?
There was, but the last time it met was in 2020.
So the other question, I guess, is how much are we actually using each?
How much are we actually losing?
Yes.
Well, it varies year over year based upon what grants we're able to secure. So, I mean, it's in the order of, I think, 40,000 last year. This year, I think it's more than that, because we didn't get the federal student grant. So, through an organization this size, it's not insignificant.
We're getting from that basically the feds aren't giving us money anymore than we expected. The province is telling us to get out of it. And it's not funding us, and I appreciate your comments about it. And we're down. Somebody at the federal or provincial level look and say. If this over, or provide the funding to keep it as it is, or because we do have antiquities in there that need to be protected and not be protected appropriately in that facility the way it currently is. Okay. Talking to us about stuff that gets taken from there, it's taken up to the gatehouse during the winter months. But moving stuff back and forth that really is valuable material, and we're just not set up in that facility to control that as it sits, and we don't have the money to invest to make that facility such that it could be a museum to protect with our. That's bottom line, without going into high-end capital costs, it's just not there. So that's basically it.
Thanks, Paul. Senator Lowry, you as well. Quick comment at the end there, if you want.
Sure. Well, I am very encouraged, for a few different times, a few different ways where there is time for engagement. I think, the survey hasn't been publicized on, it's kind of buried on the website, it's on social media. I'm not sure the survey is going to retain the kind of information that is needed to continue this conversation in a really positive way. I know Michael Rocky Lancaster, president of the Ontario Museum Association, has approached them. I know the Lebanon County Arts and Heritage Organization has done the same, so there has been an effort to try to reach out, and I would hope that, given the conversation of goodwill that I'm hearing around the table, that would be reciprocated and meaningful conversations we had with all of these partners. Sadly, I've got a clerk with me, and she said we haven't received your request, so I hope it's not just stuck in the mail or something. We would love for you to come in and talk with us. That's really important step, so I really look forward to that. And I'll maybe close with something that came to me on Friday from Charles Hill. He's a historian of Canadian art and a curator at the National Gallery of Canada for 42 years. He reached out to share how very disturbed he was by the possible redeployment of a mill under the administration of the MVCA and the disposal of its collections, and has offered his assistance. And he offered these words: the removal of these two collections from Mackenzie's studio in the middle of Kintail and their possible dispersal would be an act of vandalism of enormous damage to all Canadians, and a violation of the ethics and mandates of all heritage institutions. So having said that, I hope we all commit to working together and finding the best solution. And again, understanding that things are different from how they were 52 years ago, but responsibility towards stewardship and being a responsible caretaker does not change for 52 years.
Thank you for the presentation. All right, item number 4, delegation by Mr. Lyndon Stewart. See online or see? And Sally wanted to do you were going to say something before? No, we're good. I like. Regarding
This,
this or us,
the whole thing.
well,
Are we gonna discuss this somewhere else?
there's another report coming in October, November, I believe.
We're not discussing it today.
No.
Next steps.
There's already a planned report back to the board, in October.
Okay.
Why should we start with it? Why is this on the regulations? Maybe this is something that.
Okay, so,
Go ahead.
yeah,
Can you see that? So I just put up, why this isn't on the regulations.
okay. So, Mr. Stewart is asked to present to you today, about a regulatory limit on his property. There has not been a permit application made. There has simply been a request to remove a regulatory limit on his property in the absence of any sort of development proposal. I had a conversation with Roy regarding the suitability. It was felt to,
It was nice.
Okay, I just didn't understand the context, thank you.
It's good. Thank you. Okay. They're fine with that. No, you're fine. Just so you know, I know the other one went quite long, but you have about 10-15 minutes.
All I required.
Okay.
Blessed with Mr. Ben Dobson's exhibits A to H. It's for the board's review in detail of information that I have, documentary information. So at this point, I thank the chair. Thank the general manager, giving me this opportunity to speak this afternoon. There's a package of exhibits. And they will be provided on a need basis to members of the board, according to Mr. Dobson's instructions. Good afternoon, board members. My name is Lyndon Slewage, and with me is my wife, Cindy Slewage. We're married 47 years. We own a 6.5 parcel of land, which we purchased in August of 2016, which backs onto the provincial highway. The Huntley Creek passes through the most northwest portion of our land for approximately 195 feet. We purchased this land following a comprehensive due diligence study on our part. Even though this issue has partially been resolved by MVCA and myself, it has always been a sore point on the partial resolution. It was recently suggested to bring this evidence to the attention of this board. On June 28, 2016, we had our realtor, Cindy Brascom, reach out to MVCA for any restrictions on the already registered building lot with regards to the already approved building envelope. See enclosed mapping MVCA Ontario Regulation 153/06, along with her email to Mr. Craig Cunningham, MVCA employee. His reply enclosed, the building envelope is outside of the 1 in 100 year floodplain. Thus, we move forward with the purchase. Exhibit A, pages 1 to 5, for the record. In May of 2018, it was brought to our attention that the entire lot had now been consumed by MVCA 1 in 100 year floodplain mapping. We said, how can this be? Must be an error. See Exhibit B, pages 1 to 8. MVCA mapping now indicating entire lot now floodplain, dated April 20th, 2018. Had we known this, we would have had 2 years to build on the original envelope of 131 foot times 275 feet without MVCA restrictions or involvement. MVCA, the City of Ottawa, or anyone that ever reached out or notified us that this was even in the proposed works. We live in Beckwith Township. I personally attended MVCA knowing what I had with my email in hand from Craig Cunningham and spoke with Mr. John Price and Mr. Matt Craig. I asked John, do you wish to purchase our property? He said, we do not do that. I said, MVCA erred, and now this file is a mess for us. He indicated we could work something out if agreed. He said, come back in a few days and let's take another look at this. I agreed and came back to the MVCA office. John had reconstructed the building envelope to a rectangular shape with 131 foot frontage times 131 foot rear and asked would this be something that would work. I agreed. While at this meeting, he also indicated that in his own handwriting, he wrote 118.7 and drew a part circular line from left to right of the map, attempting once again to reduce his envelope. I replied, no. It was quite apparent Mr. Price was looking to reclaim as much land, wetland back, and even had said, we lose so much wetland, it would be nice to get some back. See Exhibit C. To underscore, and as lay people, the original envelope before May 2018 was 131 frontage times 275 rear, with MVCA not retaining 50-foot control. Why would we as property owners now agree to go from 131 foot to 81 foot frontage and 81 foot rear? Something was not right with his action and his direction on behalf of MVCA. I ask you, the board, would you agree with this proposal? Mr. Price knew exactly the rules of his job, and us not having knowledge of MVCA policy to meet the deadline to have this floodplain mapping filed with the City of Ottawa as soon as possible. Mr. Price could have taken his ruler and moved his new envelope to still provide us suitable land to move forward. Something more reasonable, as he knew what little land was now remaining for us to build and how much more was still under the control of MVCA. On May 9, 2018, Mr. John Price writes his MVCA memorandum and CCs many persons. See enclosed attachment, Exhibit E, pages 1 to 5. The one item that stands out in his report is that the MVCA was not granted permission to survey the culvert sites under Provincial Highway 417. I would ask the question to this board, why Mr. Price or staff not contact the MPO and make the inquiry? Mr. Kay's email dated June 28, 2018 indicates that he had checked with internal staff and knew that the culvert was capable of handling and did not meet their policy regarding, and did meet their policy regarding 50-year storm. The MPO could and would have provided this information to Mr. Price had he requested. See attached Exhibit E. May 14, 2018. I attend the MVCA office and provided a sketch map and drawing by myself to what had been agreed. There is no 50-foot controlled MVCA buffer control on my submitted sketch within the building envelope, as it was never mentioned. See attached enclosed map along with permit application form, date, stamp, May 15, 2018. Attached exhibit F, pages 1 to 6. John Price had asked me to fluff up the ground to 12 inches around the new rectangular footprint envelope, which I completed with a contractor immediately. So 2 days later, on May 16, 2018, Mr. John Price attends our land at 9 o'clock in the morning and does an MVCA site inspection. I learn at this time everything is in order and in compliance. Well, speaking to him that morning, he goes on to say, we technically only have an 81-foot print. That 50 feet of the 131 print is still controlled by the MVCA. I said, what? See my email dated later that day to Mr. John Price and Mr. Mac Gray. Exhibit G, pages 1 to 4. I put to this board. We were blindsided. On May 17, 2018, Mr. Craig replies and indicates he does not quite understand my message and his priority is processing the application. Enclosed MVCA current final floodplain mapping of our land, Exhibit H. I might point out that when the provincial highway was being approved by the ministry in 1971, this land, along with other parcels, had been expropriated by the ministry and was surplus land which the ministry did not require to fulfill their highway mandate, was then in turn sold back to potential landowners in different sized parcels. Thus the creation of these building parcels along David Manchester Road. You are probably asking yourself, then why are we here now? Well, at the end of 2019, COVID had taken hold on our existence. In September 2020, our son was murdered here in Beckwith Township. It took many years until this year to bring this case to trial and convict those responsible. And it's taken its toll on both my wife and I and surviving family. So things do change and our hearts have changed. I would ask this board to determine what is fair considering the evidence enclosed that you have for your review. In conclusion, we are requesting this board to waive the 54-foot control buffer inside of the new building envelope, which was never spoken to by Mr. Price until May 18, 2018, while on our land doing this site inspection after the paperwork had been completed and filed by myself. This is supported by the email dated May 16, 2018 to both Mr. Price and Mr. Matt Craig. Our land has a frontage of 982.56 feet along David Manchester Road. We thank the board for the opportunity to hear our concerns. With respect, Lyndon and Cindy Sloop.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart, for your presentation. I'm just gonna ask Sally to explain the process of what happens next.
So a few points I'd like to make is, one, things do change over time. Highway gets constructed, new culverts get put in, drainage patterns change, and that's one of the key reasons why we update our floodplain mapping periodically. Number two is, as a rule, when things change like that and there's these lots created and impacts to them, we make best efforts to work with landowners, as it's been described, to ensure they don't lose their ability to develop. So even if the entirety of the property ends up being in the floodplain, we work with them to try to find a suitable area and conditions under which they can develop. When we define the new floodplain limits, we always have a setback, which is then defined as our regulatory limit, because floodplain mapping, all of these tools are only accurate at the kind of level we're working at, right? We work at watershed, watershed level. So when somebody comes in with an application, we look at the specifics of their application, including the local drainage and contours, et cetera, to see the specifics on that property. And that's in part the discussions that John Price had with the family back in that, at that time. Now, I cannot speak to the details of those conversations. John Price has passed. You cannot say what he said or didn't say in those discussions. What I can tell you is that the reason why we keep that regulatory limit there is so that when somebody does come into our office with a permit, and there's been no permit application made as of yet, that we know to flag this, that something, there's a potential risk. Now, this is really important when properties change hands. So, Sluviges, we may not own that property and see through to development of it. It may be Mr. and Mrs. Smith 5 years from now who come in and look for a permit from us. And those regulatory limits need to be there and remain there so that any future landowner knows about the things flagged for us. Those conversations that happened back in the time are simply that, the conversations about the potential for developing a property. That development potential remains, and we don't remove regulatory limits. What we do is work with individual landowners to develop permits with conditions that says, okay, despite where the hazard is, despite where the rate limit is, we will allow you to develop in this area under these conditions. And that's how the process works. And if somebody doesn't agree with that negotiated process, that's where they come to the regs committee that Janet mentioned. And it defers to the regulations committee then to decide whether or not they think that what staff had tried to negotiate with the landowner is appropriate or to owners, or perhaps not owners.
Good question.
Well, I didn't catch, I guess, the answer to the first question. Why is this at the regulations? Oh,
I can't hear or understand what anybody's saying.
So the question was, why are we dealing with it at the board here? Because
We're not dealing with the board. We just allowed him to present to the board.
correct.
Just for information purposes, only. No decision, nothing's gonna be done here today. Mr. Stewart asked to present in the eye of transparency, I allowed him to present to the board. That's on me. No decision today. Clark,
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sluage, Mrs. Sluage, thank you very much for your delegation. It's nice to see you. I wish I was there in person to see both of you. Sally, you had just described, the process of working with applicants to find a way to, ensure that the property remains developable in the future. And Mr. Sluage had, a very detailed delegation with a lot of information. And so I wasn't able to synthesize every detail of his delegation, but could you describe, or perhaps the question would be better suited for someone involved in the actual review, but could you describe where we are at, or where the MVCA and this particular applicant are at in that process? Is there still room for continued conversations with the applicant, or has there been a decision made by the MVCA here that the applicant simply can't or is unwilling to accept? Like, just wondering if there is still room for continued conversations and a feasible solution for this particular property owner.
So there's no permit application in process, so there's been no consideration of a proposal that's now has been tabled.
Okay.
If a proposal is tabled, then we can absolutely continue the conversation. The difficulty MVCA has is trying to figure out what's reasonable when there's actually no proposal on the table. And we cannot just be removing our regulatory limits in the absence of detail.
okay.
And then maybe a follow-up to the applicant.
Go ahead, Clark.
sorry, I just wanted to follow up with the applicant if possible, Mr. Slewage, as he was delegating. Is that something that you feel you can work with? Is there potential there for you to submit something official and then work with staff, or are you unwilling to do that with the current restrictions that are in place?
Well, at this point in time, we're not prepared to move forward with
Okay.
the development, but not to say someone else would, and knowing the past on it and the exhibits that this board has. I was only asking when I agreed with Mr. Price. That's all explained in the exhibits. I didn't go back and say I want to reclaim the 131 by 275, which was originally the envelope there. So based on MVCA rules, I've already given up half my property, and I'm saying the development of the property. And now I'm saying I would like that lifted only because of the history and what did transpire in this case.
But
And is that something that's
Well,
ever happened?
we have other questions in the board, so. You've
Okay,
asked
can
two already.
can I just ask one last question?
Sure.
Is that something that the MVCA has entertained in the past? Have you ever just removed a restriction?
Never.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
So I think most of my questions have been
Okay.
answered, thanks, Clark asking them already, but I guess one of the things, obviously, these people are here today and I understand that they're in a kind of a difficult situation. Do we have any advice for them?
So, the main piece of advice is if you have something that you actually want to do on your property, that you put in a permit application to do it. Because we need an actual application with details in order to have more detailed conversations with you and to delineate in writing details of what's required.
Yeah, I just think I add to that a little bit. That once. I've never seen one come to board directly, it goes to this other committee. And they do have leeway, they can make exceptions. Once that permit's been put in. Sort of like a judge with a speeding ticket, the judge can't rule on it until you issue the speeding ticket. Trying to put it in words, but he could.
But the information is sworn.
So anyway, I think that give and take that you're looking for. It probably could happen. But to start that process, you have to put in a permit, or somebody has to put in a permit. And then the discussion can happen, and that's when the give and take can happen. But we can't do that until, and it's not this whole board, it's a committee of the board. We're a very fair group, and we'll take all of your evidence into consideration. But I think that's the only way to get your answer is to put in a permit to do it, and then you get the grant.
And again, for your presentation, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you all.
Next we have item 5, written in Kelly's. Presented on part-time Trail Committee Conference.
So today we're gonna be presenting on a conference that we hosted May 28th of this year. We're gonna give you a bit of an overview of how we organized it and how the event. So little background. we developed the land conservation resource strategy, which was approved by the board of directors at the end of 2024, so the last meeting of 2024. You may remember the public consultation process where we distributed a few different surveys to gain an understanding of recreational needs within the watershed. So the survey focused on gaining information on walking and hiking, boating, watercraft, and tanning. Staff will reside and share the findings that we received from developing this strategy. So we decided to move forward with a conference. We compiled a list of the recreational sites throughout the whole watershed and also added sites that were mentioned during the survey, other sites not listed. We reached out to the owners and facilitators of these sites to gather the appropriate contact information. And these contacts were then invited to participate in the mini conference to discuss the path of recreational watershed. Site-specific summaries were also prepared for member municipalities, counties, and other owners and facilitators of the recreation. So we started with identifying the property owners and facilitators in late January of 2025 and began drafting summary documents for February and March. So we identified organizations that either have a unique program, service, structure, or method to speak at the conference in March. We asked them to join us in March. We aimed at a variety of presentations from both governmental and non-governmental organizations. The guests were invited in April, and we extended the invite to all of the property owners Brittany helped identify and facilitators. And as well as local government organizations with interest in recreational needs. So for instance, we invited the Alamo Fishing Game Association to participate in the meeting for information. So summary reports were distributed in April, and we worked on developing the posters that you see out the hallway in April and early May. And the agenda was finalized a few weeks before the event in early May, and we made a remote option available for any of those that were not able to make it here to our office for the outcome conference itself.
So we created a couple information posters. So our first one, MVCA's Alex Broadbent. I drafted this article that he created in October 2024 about the history and use of portage routes of the Mississippi River into a poster.
So Brian Anderson, forestry technician for MVCA, helped to prepare a poster focusing on Lanark County community forests. He included comparative statistics on some of their more popular locations. So you see the Bear Trail and the second being Bottle Dixon and Caldwell Lakes property. So the Bear property is for hiking purposes only, and the Bottle Dixon and Caldwell Lakes property allows for hiking, fishing, hunting, and ATV.
Kelly and I created a poster that focused on the conservation parkland study results. So recreational site data and population statistics from 1982 and 2024 were compared, confirming the supply of recreational trails, and that has not kept up the pace with population growth in our watershed. The table here demonstrates that while we've seen a population growth rate of approximately 228% in 35 years, the supply of recreational trails has not increased at the same rate.
So Alex used available GIS mapping and aerial photos to analyze and identify core natural areas. So core natural areas are defined as large areas of natural interior habitats and significant riverine linkages. He also helped to develop the pressures on land map, which was developed to demonstrate travel time from urban centers to these core natural areas. So Mississippi Madawaska Land Trust also helped participate by creating their own poster with focus on trail management and planning. So Stacey joined us halfway through the conference during our breaks, and she was able to discuss in person with some of the folks that made it, some of the initiatives that they've been working on, and some of their newest projects.
The conference was attended by 29 guests from organizations including the member municipalities, Frontenac Klamath County, Rideau Valley, Toronto Region, and Raisin Region Conservation Authorities,
National Capital Commission, Hydro One, Ducks Unlimited Canada, and Elmont Fish and Game Association.
So our presentations before lunch started off with Sally's introductory discussion on land conservation and resource strategy, where she outlined the purpose and background of the event itself. And talking about the evolving regulatory environment and the role that CAs play in this natural resource management. Our second presentation of the day was given to us by Nick Stowe, Natural Systems from the city of Ottawa. He discussed the approach and tools used by the city of Ottawa for them for their development and securing properties in their development of trails and properties for conservation purposes and passive recreational use. Third presentation was given to us by our very own Reeve Kid. He described the process and lessons learned throughout the development of trails and networks in Beckwith Township over the past 20 years. And our last presentation before lunchtime was given to us by Joanne Henderson, so manager of recreation and culture for Town of Carleton Place. She provided an overview of the current trail systems in Carleton Place and how it's developed with a focus on natural areas within an urban setting. Oh, I'm sorry, I spoke too soon. Our last presentation before lunch was actually given to us by Brooke Ross and Willis Deline. They're from Township of North Frontenac, who gave us a presentation on their tent camping and development of the services that it provides. So it's North Frontenac Department's history, governance, land use permits for usage of crown land, program highlights, staffing, funding, challenges and opportunities, and their presentation was really unique for the day.
The next presentation was the Eastern Ontario Trail Rail Loop, presented by Richard Allen, Manager of Economic Development of Frontenac County. Richard described the vision to establish the Eastern Ontario Rail Trail Loop as a signature tourism experience in Eastern Ontario, and the process of working with multiple partner organizations, including the 3 counties, 1 town, 1 township, and a conservation authority across a large geographic area to evaluate and establish this potential tourism opportunity. The next presentation was on secondary uses of hydro corridors. Roman Dorfman from Hydro One described the various responsibilities Hydro One in managing the secondary land use program, as well as the type of uses that are permitted. Lisa Turnbull, Director of TRVCA, provided an overview of the Meadowview project and how it's been implemented through the collaboration and application of Hydro One secondary land use programs. The Meadowway is a naturalization project transforming 16 kilometers of mowed grasses in the Gatineau Hydro Corridor in Scarborough into meadow habitat, active transportation links, and vibrant public space. The presentation was Capital Pathways and Trails. Patricia McMillan, Senior Planner from the NCC, presented on how the NCC approaches pathways and trail planning. The focus of the presentation was on NCC Capital Pathways Network for the Green Belt, with references to current plan implementation efforts and best practices. The final, last but not least, presentation was the Power of Partnerships, Managing Stewardship and Recreation on Conservation Lands, provided by our Janet Mason as the chair of the Ottawa Stewardship Coalition. Janet explained that municipalities own natural areas that lack resources to manage their conservation and use for sustainable recreation. Partnering with other federal community organizations offers a means to provide stewardship for the lands with a small investment of municipal resources. She described a model of public, private, and rural partnership. She provided examples of these partnerships in Ottawa to illustrate how many forms that they can take.
So post-conference survey was distributed to ask your participants to identify the most relevant presentations to them. So tied for first place with the NCC's presentation on capture and pathways, and as well as Joanne Henderson's presentation on urban trails and Carleton Place. Second place was Janet's presentation on the power of partnerships. And many attendees commented on how her presentation really tied together especially being at the end, so it tied together the conference by demonstrating how each of the organizations in the room can work together to collaborate on providing concrete examples of models for everybody in the room to work. Attendees were also asked to identify some of the helpful follow-up activities. Activities that were identified as were the preparation of a discussion paper regarding trail and park land policy and planning approaches. And the second was a review of trail development opportunities on public.
So some lovely comments that we received at the end of the post-conference. They included, there was a strong need for collaboration and coordination of trails in the area. A watershed linkage makes sense, and MVCA has shown it can bring the right people together for intelligent trail discussions and planning. All presentations were interesting and brought a little something different that made me reflect on how we do things and how we can improve on the way we do things. It was amazing to see that there are other organizations in the region who work in trail management. It was great to make connections and gain resources. Hope to build these connections and continue exchanging ideas and tips. An attendee also suggested additional follow-up activities, including providing a discussion paper that includes strategies to provide both recreational activities and trails and conserve protected areas on the same property, and identifies trail development and environmental stewardship opportunities on public land, and identifies partnership opportunities that protect long-term conservation and save the public money as demonstrated by Jim Mason. The last comment was a big thank you for an educational day.
The feedback we received underscored the value of open communication and demonstrated that there's a strong willingness among the participants to collaborate on trail development within our watershed. There's a clear interest in exploring new opportunities for collaboration and sharing of our resources. And then breaks were built into the conference to encourage networking conversations between organizations who may not have connected prior to our. So next steps are to follow through with the helpful follow-up activities as identified by the participants. So number one, they're creating that discussion paper as mentioned. And number two is to continue to grow the network of landowners and facilitators that we've started. So with new dialogue now underway, maintaining and strengthening these relationships is key. It's important for us to continue our outreach efforts to encourage continued communication and collaboration. We hope to plan future mini conferences, or rather symposiums, as Janet has mentioned, that's the proper term. So moving forward, we're trying a symposium, using knowledge we've gained from this conference, moving forward to hopefully improve.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Is there any questions regarding the conference? It looked like a great day. Mary Lou and then Richard.
Thank you. I was impressed. Under your takeaways, the first was prepare a discussion paper to share with partners. This is a request. Can you please send me a copy when it's done? Second question is, when will it get done?
Joe, ask.
No, unfortunately, we don't really have an answer for when we're gonna complete it. It's just something that we're planning to do. I think it's just dependent on time and staff availability to be able to create and to send that out. But we're hoping to continue to use that in contact list for when we do create this, and we'll make sure to include you on that list of people to forward once we have some concrete reports to flow.
Thank you. And it seems like a real interesting approach to problems that are shared among the municipalities as well as conservation.
Richard?
Yeah, I think it was a great day. But saying 29 people, most of those. There were presentation, like there wasn't more than 5 people that were presenting on this. Like, and when did we decide to get into this business? Like we're talking about these category 3s, where there's all kinds of people doing these trail things. And there's the Backyard Trails Association. And also we're in this business. Like, how did that happen? Like,
So you may recall during our discussions last fall regarding the land conservation and resource strategy, there was actually discussion specifically on the role that MVCA would have in trail planning, development, that sort of thing. And the discussion landed with that MVCA play a facilitator role. And that's all we were doing, was facilitating a conversation and information sharing. The follow-up discussion paper, again, people had asked for us to share the policies and planning approaches in a single document so people can see what each other are doing. We are not in the trail planning business, so we agreed at the board table that the word would be facilitate, and that's all of it.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. On to item. On to item 6. Watershed outlook.
I'm the water resources specialist at the MVCA, and I'm just here to give you guys a brief summary of the watershed conditions. Just a brief reminder, I presented in the beginning of summer, we had some time, but we separated the Mississippi River and Park River watersheds for monitoring and reporting purposes. So you can see this over on the slide here. Currently, Mississippi River watershed is in a level 2 drought status, and Park River watershed is in a level drought status. And those drought statuses, again, a little reminder, they go up to level 3. So level 3 is the most severe. So a level 2 indicates a potentially serious problem of water supply. And then the level 3 is the indication that water supply has been weak today. And so you can see kind of the timeline is how we move into these conditions. So Mississippi River, we moved into level 1 on August 11, and level 2 just after last Friday. And then the Park River watershed moved into level 1 on July 31st, level 2 on August 6th, and level 3 again last Friday. And those factors were mainly driven by our past 30-day precipitation and our past 30-day stream. And stream flow is highly tied to precipitation, so I wanted to take you through kind of our stream flow as we've seen it this year. So on the Mississippi River system, this specific station is at Ferguson Falls. And this graph is showing you the daily mean stream flow. And so the red line is 2025, so conditions we've seen this year. The dark gray one is the historical average that we've seen. And you can see that we dropped well below average in June. That is because we had extremely low precipitation in June, well below average. And then continued into the summer, we had below average precipitation, above average temperatures, which kind of continued to trend. But it's interesting to see here. I pulled up a few other historical years to compare against. So 2024 is just last year, which is more industrial years that we've seen. Versus 2018 and 2020 are on there. Those are 2 previous drought years that we've seen that MVCA has gone into level 1 conditions. So you can see we've even dropped below those conditions. And then into the Park River watershed. Into Park River watershed. So again, daily mean stream flow is on the left-hand side there, and then kind of across our summer months. Again, you can see June really dropped the stream flow levels. And so red again is our current year, 2025. Gray again is historical average, And then this one slightly differently, we're looking at, we compare our stream flow to the lowest average summer monthly flow. And this is required by, the Ontario Low Water Response. And so lowest average summer monthly flow is black, and then, our indicative levels of 1, 2, 3 are in, yellow, orange, and red. So you can see for most of August, you can see it's sitting in this level condition. And it's dropped as low as 0.01 cubic meters. And then just kind of looking at what we see in the future. So short-term forecast, our week forecast, for example, we're expecting maybe a little bit of rain next weekend, 2 weeks. Again, limited rain forecast, short term, as well as long term. So this is a forecast of Environment and Climate Change Canada saying that there's a 50% probability that we're going to see above average temperatures September, October, November again. So increased temperatures, however, the forecast for precipitation doesn't have a large confidence at this time, so it's hard to predict what we'll see. But basically, in summary, the summer is over, but the drought is not. Temperatures have dropped, which will provide you summer leaves, and you have had some rain. However, not enough to kind of pull us out of the drought level that we're currently sitting in. So we need sustained, substantial rainfall to kind of start pulling us out of this. And then another thing that's important to mention is we are preparing for fall drawdown. So in the fall, we will draw down our reservoir lakes in preparation for spring freshet in order to hold the snowmelt and runoff that comes in the spring. And so we're gearing up to start that kind of mid-September. We won't see a ton of relief from the mid-September operations because everything is so low right now. But hopefully that could provide some controlled relief in mid-October when more operations start to do it.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Is there any questions or comments? Very good.
Well, we're in a level 2 on this one.
Yep.
So how significant is your drawdown?
Like for fall drawdown?
Well, you said you're going to start the bottom drawdown. If we're that low,
How much is this?
how much are you going to take out?
Yeah, so great question. Likely it'll be a little bit delayed this year because nature has done some of that drawdown for us. You're absolutely correct. We have the target levels that we aim for in the fall. And those are like across the board. We do every fall we aim for those levels. So some are potentially at those levels already. However, there are still some operations that will undertake to build more space for spring freshet. But you're absolutely correct. We've already made some of that space unwillingly in summer. So.
Any other questions, comments? No, I have one comment. I'm on Buckshot Lake, the north end of the watershed, and I've never seen, 20 years, I've never seen the water so low. However, the last weekend where we got a little bit of rain, it did raise up about 2-3 inches.
Yeah, rain. Fingers crossed for more rain, absolutely. We need that sustained rainfall. The 15 to 20 millimeters last week was great. It kind of popped things off a little bit, and then it started going down. Yeah, so we need some more of that.
Thank you very much, Captain.
Thanks so much.
Okay, move on to item number 7 for information, media update. So,
Yeah, keep this quick. Highlight a couple of things. On page 35, the agenda package, it's mentioned that we received federal funding to do flood update or to create floodplain mapping for the upper Mississippi River. I mentioned for this year, that's the first phase of work, but in fact, we've also got approval for a second phase of work for next year. So it was a real tool because we're not quite sure if that funding envelope is going to remain at the federal level with the next budget coming up for the federal government. Item 5, also on page 35, there have been previous requests for a detailed budget breakdown and year-to-date for the education program. So we're already at over 96% of revenues for this year, which is great. And as of the end of August, our expenditures were only at 74%. So the program is doing very well. I did want to flag, and I imagine you guys are seeing on your ends as well, in your planning departments, but planning permit applications were really up. In the past couple of months, we were approving permits at an average of 1.3, or one every 10.3 days, so. It was a big push, and a lot of those required engineering of these higher normal than higher level than normal. And then the last thing I just wanted to flag was our latest insurance, the rate that took effect September 1 has gone up 9.5%. This is for MVCA group insurance, health, dental, etc. And so the net effect is $18,000 increase, and the details are at the end of this report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions on the DM update? Yeah,
We just have two quick questions. Whatever is written here about the permitting, I take it and display it in our social media. Because our students probably knowledge anyhow, so, okay. Second question is, were any of the 9 Alice projects in Harbor or Watershed?
I'll have to get back to you and let you know.
Yeah, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Richard.
Just on that. Is the Alice program just the one account?
It was expanded to include all of our jurisdiction, including portions of the.
Okay. Okay, just under the day camp, or it's first of all, it's hard to read because it's not the day camp, it's lots of stuff, but. I just want to point it, I have to point it, like, it's using $20,000, it's. Out of category 3, we're spending $20,000 on the camp. That type of stuff, I think we just heard it was 40,000 at the museum. But it's $20,000 we're putting into it, and I don't think there's a camp in Eastern Ontario that would be using money. And like, there's nobody that runs, Canoe Club runs one, hockey camps, basketball camps, we run one. And I don't see anybody, they're not paying rent either.
I don't see them losing the money because they've only spent 75 days.
It's in the budget to lose $20,000, they just haven't got there.
Maybe I'll go to the city or some.
Maybe I'm reading the books.
So, from our perspective, the board approved a $20,000 transfer.
Oh,
Break even. From what the board's approved. We also have a mandate to move away from requiring that 20,000, and we're working in that direction. And I would say that the enrollment numbers and the continued efforts we're making, that is our goal. So, I think we need to continue to work on that, and staff have made great progress. And we will report back to you next year, as we continue to move on this.
Well, I guess before the budget this year, before we approve another $20,000, I'd like to see the break, because we're subsidizing $20,000 towards those people that are using it. And I'd just like to see when we come to the budget, like, what a breakdown for it, showing like what we're paying staff, how many staff per camper or whatever you want to do. Like, that's what I'm used to seeing. It is what, you know, it's pretty hard. The budget, I'll be voting against it. It comes back like this, because there's no way, if it's being run, the right ratio of kids to campers, the what we're paying our counselors, whatever else, that it shouldn't break even at least. But maybe you could show me those details at budget time to justify it, but
Go ahead, Susan.
I think it would be helpful if this isn't sufficient detail, if you could provide me the detail for Beckwith, so I can see what level of detail you're receiving, and we will mirror it up.
okay, do that, because it shows the income, the number of campers, the number of counselors, and what they're getting paid, or what they cost, not what they're getting paid. But just saying, I don't think there's another camp that would be losing money in this
So Stacy and Tyler will provide that during budget time. We can discuss about it later. All right, any other questions on the report? Anything else? Okay, we'll move to item 8, draft work strategic plan update for discussion. Sally.
So, you'll recall at our June meeting, we had the strategic planning session, and we started working with us to develop some, goals and objectives and the like, and then at the July meeting, we reviewed them and suggested adjustments were made, and there were discussions around certain items that, were concerned to some members who then participatory at the, maybe the July, the June meeting. So what you have before you is the draft strategic plan wherein I tried to address some of the issues. With respect to the vision statement, there was an ask that I go back and solicit feedback from the board. So most of you did respond to that survey. And this is where we landed. Wanted the stakeholders working together to foster a sustainable landscape for prosperity, health, and well-being in a strategic plan. So I have the details here if anybody's interested, but definitely it received the greatest amount of support from amongst the board members. The other item that this the comment in particular was what sort of role, if any, should MVCA have in conducting watershed-wide surface water quality quantity type studies? And so you'll see under key initiatives on page 47 of your agenda package, under priority 2, that some additional modified wording was suggested. So it's work with partners to assess trends in surface water quantity, quality, and identify mitigating measures. I would actually suggest that we say to potential risk, because to some that might not be intuitive, but you would only mitigate if there's a risk that is found in those trends. So I hope that that clarifies that it's a very high level assessment. There's no intent by the authority or staff to get involved in individual applications. We also had a comment come in from Councillor Gower. So if you look at page 46 of your agenda package under what success looks like, item number 5, it reads currently, and this is taken from the workshop, the public can answer who is MVCA and view the authority is more than an impediment to growth, and the rivers is more than just a resource. And it suggested that we put a more positive spin on that. Thank you very much. I thought that like your wording, he says, view the authority is more than an enabler of sustainable growth. That is what we try and aim to do, but we are more than an enabler of sustainable growth. So you just forward that to be modified. So with those changes, I'm not proposing that you approve this today. I am suggesting that if there's any further comments that people have to discuss this further today, but that I would bring this back as a final in October for your review and approve.
Thank you, Sally. Is there any discussion? Knowing that we will review this again in October. Anybody know? All right, seeing none, then we will move on to item 9. Stacy, and before I read the motion, maybe you can talk about the purchase.
So bringing forward to get approval to use reserves in relation to a couple of unplanned expenses. The first is part of the Patchwork Dam replacement project. To keep things on track with the project and timing wise, we are doing a species study now for the road widening that will happen in 2026. Part of that study requires leaves not being on the tree, etc. So if we don't do it now, there's coming issues. So we proceeded with it, but we're asking to pull 15.7K from the water control structure reserve to cover that. The second item is our copier printers here in the office. We've had them for longer than they recommend and they're out of warranty and we were looking at just renewing the lease and replacing them, but we actually got the full code and assessment. Given how long we tend to keep our equipment and use it, make purchasing them versus leasing is a more cost effective approach. To lease them over 8 years would be just over 26,000 versus 16,000 just without that. So we're proposing, we'd like to purchase them and use 16.5K out of the operating reserve. We need to make other adjustments on the operating reserve for the year.
Thank you, Susie. Any questions for Stacy? Richard?
The 15,000 on the study, was that part of the, that's part of the overall?
Yeah, it's
So,
and become part of the offer.
so was that what I'm asking, is that 15,000 would have been next year's budget, part of the project?
Yeah.
So will we be putting 15,000 back into reserves next year out of that project?
Hopefully, all of that project is just gonna drain them so the next few years, depending on financing and grants, but yes.
Okay.
Really good.
Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Out of curiosity, why did the printers come out of the IT reserve?
It doesn't have the excess funds in it, given the equipment and things we've done with it.
All right, anything else? Hey,
I just want to make a comment, it's sort of in the side gate related to talking about IT. I personally have a real hard time hearing people on Zoom. For the money we spent on microphones, it's abysmal. And I don't think I have hearing impairments, I had my hearing checked. Whether it's enunciation or the volume that people speak, I really have a hard time hearing in this room. If there was a microphone, the presenters, luckily today, they were both forward speaking, but the sound in here is terrible.
okay, thank you. We'll take that back and fix with that.
Yeah, just the same, some people I hear very clearly. I can't hear Janet very well or Sally as well, so I'm just not sure whether it's just have to speak. We could have her and if we could hear, otherwise it's difficult, we're kind of sort of.
I know when Paul speaks, I hear him very well back here.
Yeah.
So you're working like.
At the county, and I don't know if it's part of the, could be added in cheaply or whatever, but they have earpiece that you can put on that feed into the sound system so you get it loud.
Man, I know this, I'll just all your staff to take a look at.
Yeah.
Okay. Parker, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just gonna complain about the sound though, so you probably can just, I'm just adding to the, I have a very hard time virtually hearing people in the room. Obviously, Mr. Sluage, given his grand voice, was no problem hearing him, and there's been a few speakers throughout the day, but I do find most people who present from the room, every 10 seconds, it's cutting out for a second or two. The second more than one person is speaking, you can't really hear anything.
All right, point, David. Of course, we would love to see our Ottawa councillors here in person, but that would solve the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's my own fault, but you know.
Anyway, can I read the motion? Anything else? Okay. Resolve the board of directors approve withdrawal of fund from reserves for 2 unplanned expenses. Excuse me, specifically, A, drawdown of a water control structure reserve by 15,700 for the species at risk studies for the Cashawat Lake Dam replacement. And B, drawdown of the operating reserve by 16,500 for replacement of 2 office copiers and printers. I need someone to move that. Paul. And second, Richard. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, on to item 10 for information, back to Stacy, financial update.
So we're looking at year to date to June 30th, and currently we're on track at about 44% of the operating budget halfway through the year. We're actually already at this point projecting 64K reduced operating budget, and hopefully currently projecting reduced use of operating reserves. The keys on that, our insurance came in lower than budgeted by about 10.5K. Our vehicle maintenance is, we're projecting to be about 6.5K less than we had budgeted. That's positive impacts of updating our fleet as per the fleet management. We have reduced direct expenses for the ED program, down about 11K from what was budgeted. And we have a few projects that have been postponed or have reduced costs. So we're postponing the Mississippi River climate change study to next year. And an accessibility study for the conservation areas is also being postponed. And the direct costs on the strategic plan came in about 10K less than we were anticipating. The consultant was a bargain. On compensation, we're on track completely with the budget. There's a bit of allocation between the different program areas. We use our online timesheets to really get actual costs. Historically, it's just been percentages and not been adjusted, but I am making every effort to make them as accurate as possible. So it's actually an increase in the category 1 staff time versus what had been anticipated being more category 2 and 3. Capital, the main item there is the delay of the water and sewer connection for here, hopefully next year. We'll get that, but we're not projecting that's going to happen this year, which also impacts financing. So reduce that payment.
Any questions for Lisa? Seeing none, thank you very much. Difficulty.
Yeah.
We have, please, we're going to first or break. Okay, we're gonna take a 2-minute break before we go, but then we just have to check some policy issues here.
It's also named. Yeah, you thought what it was or something. I was trying to prove some and stuff together was one of the. Check. Okay.
But when you be.
Yes.
Yes, when you get the medicine.
Oh,
Maybe you can-
oh, you're.
Yeah, we're going.
Yeah. Into this.
Yeah. So when we go, whatever, you're going to office for the. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, I just.
I can find out for you.
You said August and still not.
Richard.
I'll make a note of that.
Okay, I was gonna ask him, but then we got started and I didn't give it a place.
This is more for staff. You can see the word for staff.
So
I'm just.
It's what we have.
No, no.
In session, read that.
We're just.
Okay.
That and I'll be over that. Did I miss the start? I'm just saying, this is. She did like. So bad. Yeah, no, we should have something.
Yeah.
Okay. Kelly, are we good to go back up?
Yep.
Okay, great, so we're, I'm gonna break it back into item number 11 in camera, so I need I'll read the motion first. Resolved that the board of directors move in camera for discussion regarding labor relations or employee negotiations. And further be resolved that Sally McIntyre and Stacey Millard remain in the room and all other MVCA staff leave the room. Someone to move that, Paul and Bev. All in favor? So, carried. Go back into further discussion, and I have a motion to read. Be it resolved that the board authorizes the GM to execute the recommended settlement package. Someone to move that? Taylor. Seconder. Janet. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And adjournment, resolve the board. Resolve the board of directors meeting be adjourned. Paul moves that. Jamie seconds that. All those in favor? Terry, thank you very much. It was a long meeting today. Thank you for the patience.
I do all the adjournments out of my calendar.